مايك جونز عن المدن الذكية from Government and Public Sector Lead for MENA Advisor EY.
Thank you, Mr. Khalifa, for giving me the opportunity to take part in the panel today and to speak, and also Mr. Kasai and Kate for hosting the event. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you today. A lot of you will know EY for our traditional capabilities around finance. We've been in the region over 90 years, and we're a very familiar name. Some of you may not be so aware of the other work that we do around the region in some of the more sort of up-to-date areas such as smart cities and digital. And what I'm planning to cover with you today is share a little bit about some of the insights that we are gaining from the work we're doing around smart cities with government entities, not just in the GCC, but also more broadly on the global stage. So I think there's an interesting question. If you ask everybody what they mean by smart, you'll get a different answer from a number of people. We have a definition in the booklet, but ultimately, from my perspective, what smart and what a smart city means is it's actually improving the quality of life for our citizens and using technology to help improve services and meet government, citizens, and business needs. And I think one of the key aspects when you look at smart is that it's really, really important to put the needs of the citizen at the heart of what you're designing. EY recently ran a survey amongst this network and asked people what they saw as the key facets or the key elements in their view of a smart city and what as a citizen they saw. There's some traditional classic ones up there. Infrastructure obviously being a very important one. Energy, mobility, connectivity. I could go on. But what's also interesting is when you ask a citizen what they want from their smart city and what they want, they come back with a number of other factors which aren't listed on there, which is parity. So they want equal opportunity. They want agility. They want it to be easy to engage, but also easy to move around the city. They want an affinity with their city, to relate both to the city and the people. They want pride in their city, both in terms of the local level, a regional and an international level. They want it to be a stimulating experience. And they also want very strong leadership and trust in the city in which they live in. Why is it so important now, and why are we seeing all of this sudden sort of movement around smart? I'll come on to that shortly, because actually a number of cities have been moving ahead with the smart agenda for a number of years. But in terms of where we stand, if you look at it, technology is evolving incredibly quickly. Migration to cities is happening. Over 50% of us now live in cities. In terms of the evolution and access, I mean, I look at the way my children interact these days, the devices they use, how you do different things in the home now, the social networks, the immediacy of any media, and the evolution around transport. So in terms of the mobility, your electric cars, the focus on climate change, the environmental issues and the need for sustainability, and how we communicate in different ways. Currently, as I've said before, over half of the world's citizens live in cities or communities. And what's interesting is 80% of the innovation, of the energy usage, and of the emissions come from those communities. So now is definitely the right time for us to be pushing ahead with the Smart Cities agenda. Within 10 years, close to 500 cities of greater than 1 million people will exist. If you looked back at the 1950s, there were 2 megacities, which is cities of over 20 million people in population. The expectation is that by 2030, that will be 41. So we are facing unprecedented change at the moment. But what that also does is that creates challenges for our cities. Challenges around areas such as competitiveness. So we're actually all competing for talent. Especially in the region, we're all competing for growth. It's not an ideal economic environment. The oil price has stayed down, which makes it very, very important that you're responding to that competitiveness. Resilience and risk. We just heard from our colleague talking about risk, the threat of cyber. With the increased use of data, the increased availability of data, all of the modern technology, there comes with it a risk associated with that. In addition, it's not just resilience around things like cyber. It's climate. It's economy. Growth. You have to manage growth around that. So we're all trying to plan for long-term sustainable growth. But it's very, very important that you have the right underpinning elements at play. And I think one thing I would highlight that is very, very important from a smart city perspective, and I'll come on to it later when I talk about success criteria, is stakeholders. Because there are multiple stakeholders involved in any smart city activity. Multiple government organisations, private sector organisations, citizens, entrepreneurs, and managing those and bringing those together effectively is a critical aspect. Delivery, again, it's very important to highlight making sure that you're clear on what you're doing, you're prioritising, and where your money's coming from. And then again, coming back to the efficiency and the governance side, it's how do you link all of that physical, the technical, the applications, the services, the customer, and the citizen and that ecosystem. It's a difficult climate, but it's an interesting climate and one that presents us with lots of opportunity. So I've talked before about how mega cities are competing. There's some critical factors on the smart cities that are doing this right and are being successful. And what is also important in the current context of the GCC is these factors, if you get them right, are directly linked to economic performance and some of the key elements of economic performance around productivity, around inclusivity, and around resilience. So in terms of the specific areas, data-driven, again, we've just heard recently talking about the Internet of Things. There is an enormous amount of data out there at the moment. And the critical part about the data and how you leverage the data is being as transparent and open with that and making it available to others to use. If you are a smart city, for example, and you want to attract entrepreneurs, giving them access to some of the data that we are collecting and helping them to build crowdsourced apps or improve the way that we move around the city or highlight traffic incidents is a major benefit for us in terms of a smart city. From an interconnected aspect, it is leveraging those Internet of Things. It is allowing the introduction of various services and an improved sharing of information. Intelligent, it's using that information and tools to improve decision making. It's easy. It's making it easy for me as a citizen to engage with government or as a business to engage with government. Collaborative, and this is a critical one, this is breaking down the silos that exist between various organisations and entities, which enables you to improve service and also reduce costs. And resilience, again, this is a key theme, which is making sure that your city is better protected against negative influences, be they economic, be they security, or be they infrastructure related or healthcare related. To give just a couple of examples, one of the major cities has recently opened up the data that's available in its city work vehicles. And what that's led to is it's led to crowdsourced applications which has improved levels of satisfaction with citizens, actually improved safety, and it's enabled the city operations to become more efficient. Governments are also taking the opportunity to improve the creation of new businesses. So when you're registering a business or creating a business, better linkage between those ministries and organisations that makes it much easier for me as a businessman will make me want to come to a city and work in a city because it's easy to be there. And also a number of cities are investing in smart and digital and infrastructure as a lure to get incubators and entrepreneurs into their cities. So I can't talk about smart cities without talking about digital, because digital is a massive trend. I won't read all the stats because there's an awful lot on that slide, but I think one that's really interesting is the 52%, which is digital disruption, has demolished 52% of the Fortune 500 companies since 2000. That's an incredible change. If you look at the businesses of today compared to the ones of yesterday, they don't necessarily own the assets. They're very, very different business models. And if you look at the region and you look at the GCC is in a fantastic position to seize this sort of digital revolution and enabler, if you like. Of a population of over 380 million, there are 600 million mobile phone users. A lot of the countries have over 70% smartphone penetration. Saudi, for example, is number one in the social gaming arena. We have a lot of young, very tech-savvy people working around the space. However, embracing digital is fantastic, and a lot of us have got our devices and iPads and everything else, but actually using digital as an enabler and an accelerator is not that easy to do. And actually, if some recent research by Forbes showed that 84% of companies fail at their transformation in the digital era because they don't get things right. However, those cities that are getting it right are at the forefront. There's a few examples on here in terms of how some of the cities are leveraging digital to put themselves at the forefront. In Singapore, for example, patients' and physicians' medical data has been centralized to improve care and improve quality of services. New York's opened up public data to make it easier for citizens and businesses. Hong Kong, its integration of e-learning. And I've deliberately picked 2 or 3 of the things on there which are very, very relevant to us in sort of the GCC and as citizens, because there are critical commitments and activities that need to take place, that need to be delivered on around healthcare, around infrastructure, around education. And we have the opportunity with digital and smart to help deliver on those commitments, even in the current economic climate with the challenges that we're facing. So digital actually gives governments the opportunity to redefine service delivery in a smart and cost-efficient manner. And I talked about the example of a new business registration. If you could imagine where you needed to register your car for this year, you can go online, you can type it in. There's a back-end search that checks you have your insurance, that checks you have no speeding tickets, that checks you have all the relevant paperwork. You click a button, you pay, and it's delivered to your door in a week. That already exists. If you think about some of the ways that customers engage and the abilities that some countries are using now in terms of using your smartphone to engage, you can make a choice. You can go into a branch, or you can do it on your smartphone. In some cities at the moment, they're trialing actually people have chips in their hands to make it easy for them to use it as a ticket on transport. There's a huge opportunity, and I think the great place that we are in MENA and the GCC is we have that fantastic opportunity now in terms of the digital enablement, the economic opportunity, the smart opportunity to really enhance and embrace it. So what makes a smart city? There are some key elements associated with it. You'll have seen some of them on the first slide. Transport and mobility is a critical one. Obviously, we're hearing a lot about electric cars. We're hearing a lot about autonomous vehicles. You've got Waze in terms of traffic management and understanding which routes to take. You've got various ride-sharing apps. But that's going to be a critical aspect of it, and not least just the transport and mobility piece, but the last mile aspects as well in terms of our journeys to work or delivery. Environment and energy efficiency, it's a very, very critical one. And in places now you have building efficiency measurement where you can point your smartphone at it and look at it and see, well, actually, how efficient is this building? People are making choices based on energy efficiency in terms of rental or spaces that they want to live. Connected services to citizens, I've talked about that in terms of the digital aspect, but that is a real critical one. And if you put the citizen at the heart of it, if you make it easy for the citizen to engage and move around your city, you will attract people, you'll make them want to be there, and it improves the whole experience. And then underpinning those, albeit not as large as the fonts as the others, is the infrastructure and equipment. And by infrastructure, that also means things such as very fast broadband networks, very fast connectivity networks, so you can engage. The administration and the governance aspects around it I've touched on before, in terms of making sure that you have the right oversight and governance around these smart cities. Security is a critical one and will continue to be a critical one. Healthcare, again, an essential element of any smart city. And then economic development and education. So I don't intend to read through all of the aspects on this for you. But effectively, a smart city is connected, it's resilient, and it's sustainable. It connects the institution, it connects technology, and it connects humans. A system of systems is one way to describe it. It is very complex, but all of the conditions need to come together. But it offers significant business opportunities and significant economic opportunities. The best smart cities are well run, they're well connected, they're well designed and built. And the design aspect of it, I'll come on to, is a very important aspect to it. And they're inclusive and safe. And the competitiveness is a really interesting aspect to it. EY did a recent survey where we were looking at how citizens' behaviours influence the city. And increasingly, smart cities are facing a war for talent because they're looking at how do I make it easy for entrepreneurs and for citizens to engage, and how do I attract the best talent? There's a question about how do you measure the best? So, what are smart cities doing? Certain smart cities are trying to be famous for certain things. So Singapore, for example, it actually wants to be the world's first smart nation. Barcelona is looking at being at the forefront of IoT with its LED street lamps. Copenhagen wants to be the greenest city. And Seoul wants to be at the forefront of cutting-edge technology. The key thing about it, though, is looking at it from how do I go about this? And how do I actually develop a smart city and follow a roadmap in terms of making sure that I'm going about it in the right way? The critical point about this one is it all starts with a clear roadmap and a strategy. You won't be able to read this, but on the bottom there's an international standard it's an Intelligent Communities Framework. And we use that because it looks at the 5 key domains that make up an intelligent community. And that's around life, so you live, you work, you play. That's around your solutions, be it health, be it education, be it government, community. Collaborative ecosystems, so innovation, open information. Infrastructure, so again, open access to fast broadband, to transport, to utilities. And buildings and parks and malls and place. So where do you put things? How do you design your city? So what lessons can we learn? There's 7 habits that we've identified in terms of what makes a really good, successful community. I talked briefly there about being strategic, and I think a successful smart city and a successful smart city transformation has a very, very clear strategic focus and a clearly articulated intent. And that's very, very important. And you only have to look around the region to see an example of where there's very strong leadership, a very clear strategy, very clear intent, and how much progress is being made. I think part of that, if you look at Estonia, one of the things that they looked at to be successful in their aspect was they chose to look at the uses of technology to enable smart versus technology itself. And that is a critical point. Technology is an enabler. It's not all about the technology itself. analytical. It's very important that you come up with your strategy, have a plan, and measure the success of what you're trying to achieve. And that needs to be measured across all sectors. So not just government. It will need to be financial services. It will need to be healthcare. It will need to be utilities. You can do that a number of different ways. Some cities are actually putting sensors into containers to track the movement of them, for example. Collaboration is another critical point about successful cities. And that, for me, comes back to the stakeholders and the governance. Because if you get the right collaboration and people working together, it makes your life very easy. If you can't get people to work together and you've still got those silos, you'll not be successful in a smart city implementation. But it's also not just about the government silos, it's about bringing communities and businesses together as well. Speed or fast, again, talked about that in terms of network, access. As a citizen, if you want connected services, it needs to be quick, it needs to be instant. Adoption is a critical part of it. If I, as a government, come up with a new service as part of my smart city, but nobody wants to use it, it's not much use for me. Value-focused as well. I've talked about putting the citizen at the heart of things. It's what value you're delivering, both in terms of intangibles, in terms of happiness, engagement with the community, but also tangibles in terms of economic and return on investment. Ubiquitous is another word, but what that really means is it's open. Communications are taking place openly and transparently as much as is possible. That information is shared and it's available. And the final piece is that it has very, very strong leadership. Because without the strong leadership, you don't have the cornerstone of what will enable a successful transformation. And I say transformation because smart cities are a transformation, and transformation is not easy. There are multiple parts that need to come together to be successful. But I think from a point of view of where the real opportunity is, if we put the citizen at the heart of that, I think we're in a fantastic position to achieve real success in the GCC. My final point would be around taking smart to the next level, because we talk about smart cities. But the smartest cities are the ones that are actually intelligent communities. And what that means is they've got the overall vision which reflects the economic, the social, the environmental priorities of the community. And they have an overall framework that connects the applications, the solutions, provides that high return on investment and engagement with the citizens, with the businesses, and with government to create a really smart city. I'll leave you with a final slide, which is, it's very important to understand what you're famous for. And I think I talked about some of the cities earlier in terms of what they want to be, but what is it that a smart city wants to be famous for? How can I do that in a way of generating adoption and having a really long-term positive impact? It is all about the data, but it's about how you use that data, how you process that data, and how much useful data can I have? Because sensors are fine, but it's what they collect which is the really important thing. And the design thinking, and we call it, in a recent paper that we've written, called the power of three. The design thinking is making sure you get the design right up front. But the power of three is making sure that governments, businesses, and citizens, their needs and their wants are all linked in terms of your overall roadmap and vision for a smart city. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I've thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to speak to you, and if you have any questions, then we obviously have the panel, but you feel free to come and find me afterwards. Thank you very much.